Picture a figure of rugged self-reliance stepping out of history. Perhaps it's a grizzled mountain man, his knowledge of the wilderness etched into his face like the lines on a map. Or maybe a Roman legionary, tough and disciplined, capable of surviving on hostile frontiers with nothing but his training and a gladius. We romanticize these figures, admiring the hard-won skills that allowed them to thrive in a world without modern convenience or safety nets. But what would happen if a modern person, finding themselves lost and desperate, tried to apply that same ancient wisdom? What if you, armed with the survival lore of your ancestors, were put to the ultimate test? The sobering reality is that you would likely die. This is the fascinating and dangerous paradox of historical knowledge. The very techniques that once represented the pinnacle of survival acumen can become a death sentence in the 21st century. Why would the methods that kept humanity alive for millennia suddenly turn lethal? The answer lies in a profound and often invisible gap between the world as it was and the world as it is. It's a story not just of outdated skills, but of a fundamental transformation in our environment, our bodies, and most importantly, our scientific understanding of the invisible forces that govern life and death. To explore these skills is to take a journey that dismantles the romanticism of survival, revealing how the greatest threat in a modern survival scenario isn't just the wilderness, but the well-intentioned wisdom of the past. Let's begin with the most immediate of survival crises, a severe injury. Imagine you've taken a fall while hiking, and a sharp rock has left a deep, bleeding gash in your leg. Panic sets in as the blood flows freely. Drawing on the half-remembered lore from historical films and novels, you recall a dramatic, seemingly effective solution: cauterization. The hero, grimacing against the pain, heats his blade in the fire until it glows cherry red and presses it into the wound. There is a terrible hiss, a plume of smoke, and the bleeding stops. It seems like the ultimate act of rugged willpower, a method used by everyone from battlefield surgeons in the Roman legions to gritty cowboys on the frontier. It appears to solve the problem. In reality, you have just traded a manageable injury for a potentially fatal one. Modern medicine reveals the brutal truth of cauterization. The intense heat doesn't just seal the blood vessels, it causes massive, indiscriminate destruction of healthy tissue, creating a severe third-degree burn far larger than the original cut. This devitalized cooked flesh is the perfect breeding ground for infection. Worse, by searing the surface shut, you have created an oxygen-deprived or anaerobic environment deep within the wound. This is a 5-star invitation for some of the planet's deadliest bacteria, such as Clostridium tetanic agent of tetanus and the flesh-eating microbes that cause gas gangrene. You haven't solved the problem. You have locked the microscopic assassins inside and given them the perfect home in which to multiply. But what if you chose a gentler, more natural route? Ancient wisdom might suggest packing the wound with materials from the forest flora poultice of cool moss or mud to staunch the bleeding. This, however, is an even faster route to disaster. The forest floor, which seems so pure and organic, is a bustling metropolis of bacteria, fungal spores, and parasites. Packing that into an open wound is the equivalent of injecting a dose of sepsis directly into your bloodstream. The same tetanus spores that thrive in a cauterized wound are abundant in soil and animal dung, which some ancient cultures tragically used as a wound dressing. In either case, the ancient skill addresses the visible emergency flow of blood while catastrophically ignoring the invisible war of microbiology. The cure has now become the mechanism for a much slower, more agonizing death. Having hypothetically survived your initial injury, you now face the next great survival imperative: thirst. After hours of walking, you hear the most beautiful sound in the world, the gurgle of running water. You find a stream, its water running cool and clear over polished stones. It looks like life itself, the very image of pure, untouched nature. The ancient wisdom, passed down through generations, seems obvious. Running water is clean water. A pioneer crossing the American plains or a hunter-gatherer 10,000 years ago would have likely drunk from such a source without a second thought. Following their lead, you kneel and drink deeply. You have just made another potentially fatal error. While the water of our ancestors' world was relatively pristine, our modern environment is a minefield of invisible contaminants. That crystal-clear stream could be teeming with microscopic pathogens. Parasites like Giardia, Lamblia, and Cryptosporidium, often introduced into waterways from livestock or wildlife feces upstream, are rampant in many wilderness areas. Once ingested, These organisms turn your digestive system into a war zone, causing violent diarrhea, vomiting, and debilitating cramps. This leads to a brutal survival irony. The water you drank to prevent dehydration now causes rapid, life-threatening dehydration. You didn't just drink water, you drank a disease that will purge every last drop of fluid from your body. And this assumes the danger is only biological. That same stream could be carrying a silent load of agricultural pesticides from a farm miles away, or heavy metals leached from an old mine, poisons that are tasteless, odorless, and impossible to detect with senses alone. Frustrated by your failing body and desperate for any liquid, you might recall another piece of primal survival lore: drinking the blood of a freshly killed animal. It's a dramatic, visceral image of survival at all costs. Blood is a fluid, after all. But physiology, like microbiology, presents a cruel twist. Blood is incredibly rich in sodium, iron, and protein, which is extremely difficult for the human body to process without a significant intake of fresh water. Your kidneys would be forced to work overtime, pulling precious water from your own cells to dilute and filter the blood. The net result is that you become more dehydrated than you were before. You are spending water to process a liquid that provides almost no usable hydration. Add to this the very real risk of contracting a bloodborne pathogen, and the life-saving act of ancient hunters becomes a modern recipe for accelerated kidney failure and disease. Once again, the ancient solution, based on what our eyes can see, is betrayed by the invisible truths of the modern world. With your body now rebelling from contaminated water and a festering wound, a new gnawing crisis emerges: hunger. The wilderness appears to offer a potential feast. There are vibrant berries, leafy greens, and mysterious mushrooms carpeting the forest floor. The challenge, as old as humanity itself, is distinguishing food from poison. Here, ancient wisdom offers its most seemingly scientific method: the universal edibility test. It's a slow, deliberate process that feels inherently cautious. You are taught to test a plant by first touching it to your skin, then to your lip, then to your tongue, waiting for any sign of a reaction like burning or itching. If all seems well, you chew a small piece, and finally, swallow a minuscule amount, waiting for hours to see if illness develops. It feels like a safe, methodical way to unlock nature's pantry. This test, however, is perhaps the most dangerous piece of ancient lore one could follow. It is a deadly game of Russian roulette built on a single, flawed assumption that all poisons will give you an immediate warning. Modern toxicology has proven that the most lethal substances in nature are often the most deceptive. Consider the innocent-looking death cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides. Following the edibility test, you might ingest a small piece. For the next 6, 12, even 24 hours, you would feel perfectly fine. The mushroom has passed the test. Confident, you might eat the rest. But during that long symptom-free latency period, the amatoxins within the mushroom have been waging a silent, irreversible war on your body, systematically destroying the cells of your liver and kidneys. By the time the violent abdominal cramps and vomiting begin, it is not the start of the poisoning, but the announcement that your organs have already failed. The test didn't protect you. It merely ensured you wouldn't know you were dying until it was far too late. The danger isn't limited to slow-acting toxins. Other plants, like water hemlock, which is often mistaken for edible wild carrot or parsnip, contain sicutoxin, a brutally fast-acting neurotoxin. The tiny test amount that the ancient method advises you to swallow would be more than enough to induce violent seizures, respiratory failure, and death, often in less than an hour. The test itself becomes the fatal dose. The Forager's folly lies in its hubris, the belief that one can cautiously negotiate with biochemistry. It creates a lethal illusion of control, a belief that nature's poisons play by observable rules. The truth revealed by modern science is that for many of nature's deadliest plants, the only test is absolute, positive identification. Any form of physical experimentation is not a test, but a potential suicide.